Welcome back in. This segment of the Sports Source is brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Easy financing with no down payment, free online estimates, no third-party contractors, and they even handle your insurance company for you. Let them deal with that mess. Call Daniel Hood Roofing today. Operators are standing by. We discussed a little bit earlier the system that had to come into the evaluation for both Hendon Hooker and the receivers probably when evaluating Tennessee players at the next level. So now that Hendon is in the NFL with the Detroit Lions, Vince, how important is that for Tennessee, for Hendon to maybe find success at the NFL level, so maybe that becomes less of a question for Tennessee in college?
100%. It's a multi-step process to try to eliminate those narratives that are out there, not just from the media and other people using it to negatively recruit Tennessee, right? But in order for Tennessee to be able to, from a coaching standpoint, get the right players and then not have the NFL be afraid of Tennessee's players and move them down their boards. So it's a multi-process thing. The next step is not just get them there. They've gotten Hooker drafted, maybe not as high as people wanted. But if he has success, then that will help that narrative. Now, Hooker, some of that is going to be because he's a special player, right? I mean, they asked him to do so much pre-snap that even though the offense is very different, I think he can make that transition. But a lot of people don't know that or maybe aren't willing to take that chance. Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, he went to the Florida game because he was trying to figure this out. And then he talked to the coaches frequently. He said it is something that we had to do a deep dive into. So that transition narrative is going to be there for the NFL and for in recruiting until a Tennessee quarterback has success on the NFL level. And obviously he gives them a great chance to do so, but it's the wide splits, it's the tempo. They just don't do that. The wide receiver things are so different than what they do in the NFL.
At the same time, I look at Ohio State and go, if C.J. Stroud comes out and is a bust again, Chicago Bears guy I don't have much faith in. Right, so, I mean, I would look at Ohio State and go, all right, put the next quarterback up here. I'm not expecting very much from him in the NFL.
Right.
So I think they have to take some of that into account as well, that, there's some other places that run what the pros like, but every time one of those quarterbacks yet, I haven't seen in Ohio State, besides Joe Burrow, and I count him from LSU, that is really productive in the NFL after being very highly drafted. So I think, I know they have to get through that part of it, but as I would be, my counter to them is, you've thought about this school all this time. How many busts have been at the quarterback position that have taken eye from Ohio State that have not turned out to be very good pros?
I think it's beyond just Tennessee. I think it's Heupel's system because there's not really a track record, whether it's UCF or that Baylor type of offense. Yeah. RG3 would be an exception, but he had injuries. So that's I think, how they get.
And it's going to be interesting going forward. More and more schools are starting to try to run this.
Right.
I think I was talking to John earlier in the week. I think you now have going into next season 20.
You have a number of coaches around the country that have now learned from this type of structure.
That are going to be running this sort of thing. So it will be interesting going forward if Hooker doesn't have success. But quarterbacks from the other schools that are running the Heupel kind of system have success, then I think that scrubs it just a little bit. That doesn't put it on one player or one coach, because if nobody from the system is having success, then I do believe that begins to hurt you. So it's spreading out a little bit. You got more schools going to run it. I think it's important to see how players from the other schools running this do as well.
What if the NFL starts to do some more of the stuff? Not the whole thing, but some more of those principles.
Yeah, well, it used to be the NFL would look down on the college game, but now the NFL more often takes from the college game than it used to, right?
Yeah, they're not going to take the whole thing, but they're going to take, that looks good. That looks good. I could see how to use that. And so they are going to take some things.
Especially if it helps a player that they've drafted and they want to succeed on the field.
And Heupel's already said, well, it's funny, you guys asked about this. NFL teams are asking me about the things we do. So that means there's some interest there.
Does it matter with the receiver position as well? Now, Josh Huepel's had a number of receivers drafted, but to maybe move up because they're going to be compared to other schools where they're drafted, does that matter as much, or is it mostly with the quarterback position?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Very open to being disagreed with, but I think it does because so much stuff that I read about Tennessee's offense before the draft was, okay, it's a one-read thing. The receiver and the quarterback have to be on the same page because they're going to be running an option route.
Yeah.
What I didn't read about Hyatt or Tillman, either one, was anybody breaking it down and saying, oh, man, they're great route runners. And it came back because of the kind of system that Tennessee runs. The routes are just different than a pro-style system. So I think that can hurt just a little bit.
I think the big thing there, how you get over that, if you had a guy with the Hyatt or Cedric Tillman that has the side-to-side, puts his foot in the ground, makes guys miss, that goes away. He comes out a first-round pick.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll add, because this will continue to be a question until it isn't, I guess, and it comes back to recruiting, right? You're trying to get other players that want to go to the NFL. They still landed Dante Thornton, a wide receiver transfer from Oregon, and they still landed Nico at quarterback, and they have a 2024 quarterback and Merklinger, who's committed, 4-star prospect. So even with these questions, they're still doing okay on the recruiting trail for these offensive guys.
Yeah, you need to continue to get more of them to the NFL
Sure.
and then have them be successful to squash all that.
Well, and let's face it, you get to the NFL, whether it's first through third or fourth or fifth, right? Your second contract, if you're a quarterback, is where you make their money. Your first, now that they have the first round capped, you're not really making the kind of money you used to where if you got in the first round, you made more than most vets did. It is all about getting to the second contract. So if you're a guy, you want to get stats so I get drafted and get in somewhere, and then it's about me what I do at the pros.
The 2023 NFL Draft, old news. When we come back, we'll look ahead to the 2024 Draft. Which Vols should maybe be getting more attention heading into the next year? We'll discuss right here on The Sports Source.